boys and girls, time for a video. Well, not a video, the video. So I got something in the UPS today. Marquez, subscriber, longtime subscriber and watcher of the channel, took pity on me and sent me a bunch of lovely, my lovely DDR4 RAM for my Dell R730 server. So he sent me 8 32 gig sticks, and we're about to go install them into the Dell R730. But you see, I got something in the way of the of getting to the 730, and that's the, what is that, the 450? Yeah, the ThinkEdge SE450 from Lenovo. And you're probably saying, well, Joe, why don't you just use this beauty? Well, problem is I can't put those Tesla video cards in there, and any other video card that I'm aware of that I can afford. So this server is just kind of, I do some projects on it. In fact, it's going to be my next gen server virtualization for testing for server 2025. So anyway, I need to get this thing moved so that I can get to the server. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is to disconnect the power. A lot of people do this with the machines plugged into mains, plugged into the electrical. I'm not one of those people. I don't like doing that. There are some arguments that if you do that, you know what else? I'm going to unplug that. That noise is that Lenovo server. It's not my lovely Dell making that noise. It's a Lenovo. Right now, it doesn't need to be plugged in either. So let me move these power plugs over there. Toss that fiber connection to the back. And then let's take the lid off. I've now unplugged it. Some people claim that leaving it connected is better because then, in theory, it's the unit is grounded. Okay. I'm not even going to argue that point. Whatever you want to do. I've just always been in the habit when working with computers and electronics to, even though they may be turned off, to unplug them from the mains or from from the outlet. And you gotta be careful. These damn Dell covers, even though they've rolled the edges of these things, look, even though they've rolled these edges, you can still cut yourself, especially if you're thin-skinned like I am. Now, this is going to be a bit of a kerfuffle because you know what I didn't realize? I did not realize or remember that these Tesla video cards are going to have to come out of there in order for me to get to the RAM. Alright, so let me set y'all up over here. I got to remove these Tesla cards. Actually, let me take a picture inside of this thing. Yeah, so there's how the RAM is currently configured. So I've got a RAM stick here and a RAM stick here, and that's it. 64 gig of RAM. Alright, so I've got half the RAM in because I'm not real sure of the configuration of exactly what DIMMs to put them in. So I just have to do it. I'm going to do it. I think it goes in A1. It goes in, I know if it's 32 gig only, it goes in A1 and B1. So I'm thinking the next 32 gigs will go in A2 and B2. And that way they're in dual channel mode or whatever that is, so they're optimized. Anyway, it's what I read in a book somewhere. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm getting ready to turn this on and fire it up and see if it sees the RAM. I'm just waiting for the iDRAC to finish doing its thing over there. So I plug these in and I give them about 5 minutes and then I turn them on and go in and we'll see if the RAM is being seen. So wish me luck. Alright, so I fired it up in that configuration. As you can see here, I've got two 32s and two 32s. Now according to what I'm told now is the next 32s, one goes here, one goes here, the white slots. One goes here, one goes here, these white slots. So you fill up all the white slots first with married pairs. It's my understanding. Don't quote me on any of this. I don't know for sure. I'm just telling you, regurgitating what I read. So we'll try putting them here, and then I'll boot it up once more, and we'll see if it sees. It now sees 128 gig, well, 126 gig, and all the RAM tests fine. So we'll put the other 4 in, and it should read 256 when I'm done. So wish me luck. Here goes nothing. So this is what I was talking about. You see how it's got that little. I don't see any other area to get that cable around into this compartment, which then can plug into that. So maybe you're supposed to, I don't know, trim this little black plastic piece that you totally couldn't see but can now. I don't know. I just kind of stuff it in there like that and hope for the best. I find that usually works, especially with high-end server equipment like this. Of course I'm kidding. So my 2 Teslas are in. We now have 256 gigabytes of system RAM. I have never in my life had a system with that much RAM in it. I have a feeling I'm going to be putting that RAM to use. As I start playing with AI more and more, I find that not only do you need RAM, video RAM, to make things run really well, you also need system RAM. And by God, it's about time I found a job for these high-end servers that I love to play with so much, and it's good to see them being put to good work. I've got one of these units at work, and I've got a unit here, and I also have an AMD EPYC here and an AMD EPYC at work. So what I learn here in my lab, I apply at work. So I eat my own dog food, and hopefully this one will end up better than my 720 did. I don't want to jinx myself, but it was hard parting out that 720. Me and that server had a lot of good times together. I do like the fact that the gimbal is following the shot here as I move around the room. I'm gonna go get the cover, and I'm gonna put that on. I'm gonna stop the camera now. I think you get the idea. In a minute, we'll go back over to the Proxmox interface on my desk, and we'll see if everything is working as it should. And we'll fire up those video cards, and we'll start talking about what I'm going to do, what use I'm going to put those cards to. So those Tesla cards. So stay tuned. Now this is a virtual machine at the office that one of my clients' offices that I'm configuring. So the first thing I'm going to do here is go and make sure I've got remote desktop set up for this user, turned on, confirm. Now I'm going to be the only one logging into it, so it says HTITX already has access, so we're good there. Tell it okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to power this machine down, and then I'm going to, well, first let's make sure we're getting an IP address. Yeah, we're getting an IP address and an okay. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this machine down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the Tesla P40 video card. I'm going to pass it through to this machine. And that's why I turned on remote desktop, because it'll need to be available once I boot the machine back up, so I can get in load drivers and whatnot for it. All right, so we'll come back down here to hardware and we'll go to add, and we're going to add a PCI device. And we're going to add a raw device, and we're looking for the NVIDIA. There's the NVIDIA Quadro. We got 2 video cards in here, so we don't want the Quadro. We want the Tesla P40. And we're going to give it all functions, advanced, PCI Express, ROM bar, everything. Okay, so now it has that video card passed through to it. We don't need this CD-ROM drive anymore. And we don't need any media in that CD-ROM drive. And we want our display turned to none. Okay, so now we're going to come back up here to summary. We're going to go ahead and start the virtual machine. And then we're going to wait for the machine to start up and see if an IP appears here eventually. And then we can try to remote desktop into that unit. All right, so it shows we have an IP. So let's see if we get lucky. Sometimes they'll come right up. Yeah. Well, it looks like it's going to work. All right, so the next trick is to get the NVIDIA drivers to load. Now, I use a very specific set of NVIDIA drivers for the Tesla P40, so keep that in mind if you're trying to do what it is that I'm trying to do. I recommend you use the same drivers I am, so that you'll have the same results. So, and these are the grid for Windows, I believe, guest drivers. Yes. And the one you're looking for is this one right here, the 53833. I found that to be the most compatible. I'm going to go ahead and paste that here. I found that to be the most compatible driver set to use with Windows 11 and the Tesla P40. And there are some changes we're going to need to do as well, because for one, if you bring up Task Manager, you'll notice we don't have any video card there at all. And the goal is we want to see that in order for it to work with the AI gen we're going to install, both the our Llama 3 and both Ollama and Invoke AI are both going to need access to the NVIDIA driver to the card. So we're going to install these drivers, but it's not just a matter of installing these drivers. We're going to have to make some registry edits, and I'm not going to show you me doing that, but I will include the article, if I remember, down in the show notes is where you can go and get that information. Because once you load the drivers, you have to put them in WDDM mode. Unless they do that by default, we'll see here. We might get lucky, and it might just put them in that default mode. If not, we, like I said, we can do a registry hack and work around that. Okay, and I always do custom, and I'm going to let it do both. It wants to put in RTX Desktop Manager. You know, I'm not going to put that in. Do I need, you know what? I'll just put it in. What the hell? I'll just put it all in. Go all in. Go big or go home, right? All right, now hopefully I've rebooted now. I've installed the graphics driver, rebooted, hopefully. We'll see here. Hopefully it has loaded the driver, and it has. Now, what mode is it in? And here's the deal. I don't believe the task manager shows you what mode it's in. So we have to go out to the command prompt. So I'm going to go out to the terminal. And I'm going to do NVIDIA-SMI. And we should see, there it is. It's in WDDM mode. So that looks like it will work. We have 24 gig of RAM on that card, and it looks like we are successful. So I don't need to show you the registry hack. So there you go. Yeah, now we can move on with the next step, which is to get the AI software installed. All right, so this is the virtual machine over on my Dell R730. And let's see if she's configured and ready to go now. So I should have 8 CPUs, 32 gig of RAM, 120 gig SSD, and a Tesla P40 with 24 gig of lovely memory on here. And let's customize this, can't we? Can we yep. Let's personalize. Let's make this a dark theme. I like that dark theme. There we go. Better yet, I like this one even better. Okay, so now that's, that just changes your whole outlook on life, right? So we got our GPU temperature there. We got the RAM monitor. I love Windows. And yeah, I'm running Windows 11 in a virtual machine with a Tesla P40 pass-through. So say what you will. So anyway, always the first step to installing anything Linuxy that's going to run under Windows is always involved Python. As long as I can remember. So I've got this version of Python, the 3.11.0 release candidate 2. This is the one I'm using. You could use 3.10 if you want to. It's up to you. One very important thing you need to do is make sure you click this Add Python 3.11.11 to path. And then click Install Now. Now, whether it needs it or not, I'm not quite sure. I know I've just always installed Python because it gives you some other capabilities as well under Windows. You know, kind of Windows and Linux have kind of merged, I guess, for lack of a better word. In fact, what we're going to be seeing today is I'm going to be getting AI up and running not in a Linux virtual machine, but in a Windows virtual machine running Docker for Windows and making it all work because I'm a Windows guy. You know that about me. I've told you. So as a matter of course, I just install Python and it gives you some, you could also install Git. That might make your life a little bit easier, especially if you're going to be doing the Linuxy stuff on Windows. You know, tools, that's a good thing. All right, so the setup was successful, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now, the next thing we're going to need is the Docker desktop installer. So if you don't know where to get that, just do a bleep bloop in the Google search. Or better yet, go to perplexity.ai and type it in there. So I've downloaded it. I'm going to go ahead and install it. This is going to take some amount of time. And what this will give you the ability to do is to run Docker apps under Windows and give you a good front-end interface for Docker to manage them as well. So I don't know how long this is going to take because, frankly, I had Docker installed before. I am going to use WSL2 instead of Hyper-V because it is recommended. And WSL2 is like the core of Linux put into Windows in a virtual environment where they can share resources, just like you would with Proxmox, right? But you're doing it in Windows. Wow. It blows my mind. And I'm going to add a shortcut to the desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it okay. Now this will take some time. I don't know how long it'll take on yours. It might take a shorter amount of time on mine because I have installed it previously and then uninstalled it. And then now I'm reinstalling it for this demo. All right, so we had a successful installation. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I'm going to close this. Now, for all intents and purposes, we should be good to go, but we're actually not. Because Docker Desktop is not running. If you look here under the tasks, you'll see nothing to do with Docker is running. Nothing is down here on the taskbar. Now, normally I would tell you after installing an application to restart Windows, but I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to go ahead and just start up Docker Desktop over here. Now, at this point, you need to make a decision. If you start up Docker Desktop, you have an option to restart it every time you start Windows and log in. So you need to be aware of that. If you don't need it to come up every time and use those resources, then don't set it to automatically start up, and I'll show you that here in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and just accept the terms. There's a lot of click-throughs here. They want you to create an account. I'm just going to skip that. I'm going to skip the survey. And I'm going to skip the sign-in. And I just want the Docker engine to start, for the love of God, please. And now you'll see, start seeing the VMM WSL for the Windows subsystem for Linux start to increase and use more memory. That's why we gave this thing lots of RAM. Now, the first startup took me, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes the first time on a Windows virtual machine running a Tesla P40. Your mileage might vary. It's doing whatever it's doing. Just leave it alone. Be patient. And eventually it will start up and show you something on the screen that says, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to serve, and then we can do our next command. All right, so that didn't take 5 minutes, but it is up and running. And let's go look here at our resource usage. Yeah, you can always tell because this Windows subsystem for Linux memory manager is always consuming RAM. So that's good. And earlier I was telling you about how to make, if you want Docker to start up automatically, every time you restart the computer, you come up here to the little gear icon and you click that little box, Start Docker Desktop, when you sign into your computer. I'm not going to do that right now. I am going to close it though. And now that will give us access to the Docker commands out at our command prompt. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to right click on the start button and go to terminal as an admin. And then I'm going to start telling this bossing this computer around, telling it to install Docker for me. So I'm going to go over here. I've done this before and I've saved my notes. And I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste this command, which, if I have done everything correctly, will just work. And there it goes. So now that we've installed the Docker Desktop, we have all the underlying components that we need to install Docker applications natively under the PowerShell or under the Windows command prompt. This might work under the command prompt. I don't know. I just always use PowerShell. And now I've discovered there's this new little tool, PowerShell programming. Yeah. Anyway, I've got to look into that. I got a video that I've set aside to do that. So this is going to take some time. It's quite a large number of files. Now I'm running this command assuming that you have a GPU, and I do. If you didn't have a GPU, you can still run this program, but it's going to be, slower. But there is a Docker command to run with no GPU, just to use the CPU instead. But that's not what we're doing in this case. So we're going to let this download. And then once it's done downloading, we'll see if it's running. And then we'll go give it another command that'll allow us access to it from outside of the physical machine it's on, or the virtual machine it's on, I should say. Alrighty, so it appears that's complete. That took about probably 15 minutes. And again, this is a speedy virtual machine I've set up here with lots of RAM, and you can see I am so glad I gave it lots of RAM because it is using it. Even just sitting there idle right now, it's using a lot of CPU cycles. And that is mainly due to the VMM WSL. So we come over here to our Docker icon and go to the dashboard. We should now see this container up and running for OpenWebUI, and it is. It's at port number 3000, so that's good. So in theory, we could go to that port, and let's just try that. And go to 3000 here. And it looks like we are successful. We use my UJP here. And okay, here we go. So it looks like we've got it created. Go full screen here. Okay, so next thing we need to do is get a model. And let's just see how everything's doing here. Yep, we're using up lots of RAM. That's what we're supposed to do. So I'm going to come down here to UJP, my name, go to settings, and then go to admin settings, and then come here to models. Now, you need to know the name of the model in order to download it. And so in order to see the model names, you click there on that link and it'll give them to you. So I'm going to use the 8 billion parameter llama. So I'm going to grab this right here, llama 3.1. And I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to paste that here. And then click the download icon. And this software is smart enough to know, hey, he wants me to go pull this image for the model and install it. So we'll let this run. So while that process is running in the background, the next thing I'm going to do is find out my IP address of this machine. You just type ipconfig and it'll spit back out the IPv4 address. So I'm at 5.27. So there's another command. In order for me to be able to access from outside my machine's network interface, in other words, running it as a local host, I'm going to have to put a command in to do a proxy port for Docker. So that command looks just like that, with the exception that you change this to your IPv4 address. So mine is 5.27, right? Did we not verify that up above? Yes. So this is for Windows to listen interface on this interface is a port proxy. Listen address, listen port, connect address, yada yada, and connect port 3000. Hit enter. And now, in theory, I should be able to access this web interface here from any other machine on my network. So once the model loads, we'll test that theory. I wanted to share this screen with everybody to show you what a successful download looks like and how you need to not click on anything during this time frame while this is running, because you could end up getting an error that would confuse you into thinking you didn't download the model successfully when you actually had. You can see it took a bit of time for that model to finally register that it had downloaded. So if we come back up here to new chat and now go to select our model, we can select the Llama 3 and set it as our default. The next thing I want to do, though, is make sure I can access this interface from outside of the virtual machine. So I'm going to open up a browser window. So let's try this again. And yay, I had success. Okay, so let me select my model here, set it as my default. And I'm going to ask it a basic question. We'll ask it a question to wake it up. And that's what you basically have to do. You have to wake this thing up to get it to respond. And eventually it will kick in and start consuming massive more quantities of memory as it endeavors to, there you go. Explain how a transistor works. Explain it to me like I am in high school. And you can see it answers fairly quickly, and it's doing the beat bops over here, you know, consuming memory, consuming CPUs, doing a good job of both. But it makes me curious now because as I've been reading some more articles, I was placing very little importance upon the CPU, but come to find out it might play a bigger part than I had first expected. And just like RAM on this Dell R730, I have lots of CPUs. Now, you might think, stop. That's enough. You've succeeded. You've done your good deed for the day. No, I have only begun to do my good deed for the day. I also want to be able to do not only text to whatever AI, I want to be able to do text to photos, to artwork, to that kind of thing. I could go with something like Stable Diffusion, but I'm not a real big fan of the automatic 1111 install for Stable Diffusion. I prefer a different program, and that is Easy Diffusion. And it's a one-click button Windows installer, and it just works. It takes a long time to get it set up at the beginning, but it just works. And I think we're going to load it on this one. And we're not going to stop Docker from doing its thing. It's got plenty of RAM available to it. We're just going to load this Easy Diffusion right on top, and we're going to try to run them simultaneously. This virtual machine, I want to go get Easy Diffusion, and I want to install it. And I'm just going to do a search for it, and then it's a real simple. You go to their GitHub page, you go to download for Windows. Bing, bang, boom, it's downloading the installer. We'll wait for that to happen. And what's troubling me is I only have 23 gig of free space. And while that should be enough, I hope it should be. I'm thinking it'll be enough. We're about to find out. We're about to embark on this voyage together. So, all right, so we've got the file downloaded. So now the hard part. I double clicked on it. That's the hard part. That's a joke. Yeah. It's a 1.9 gigabyte file, install file. That's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of stuff. But we built a virtual machine that should be able to handle this. And so Now you're about to see why I prefer Easy Diffusion to Stable Diffusion, and to each their own, right? I'm a Windows guy. I like a Windows GUI installer. I'm going to accept the license agreement and all this stuff, and space required is 25 gig, space available 20 gig. We got a problem. We got a problem. We're going to have to increase the size of our hard drive in order to make this happen. Alrighty. I want y'all to be able to see what this machine is doing. So, all right. So I've expanded the partition by 80 gig. Don't you just love virtual machines? Remember when you'd have to go out and buy an actual physical hard drive to make it bigger and all that? Yeah. So I've cleared space next to it. So now I just need to right click on that partition and extend the volume and take over that 80 gig of additional space, and then bing, bang, boom. My problem with installing this software now should be resolved. So let's go load this program again. Under downloads, we're going to install Easy Diffusion for Windows. Wait for it to come up. Yeah, I honestly set out to do, I'm going to go ahead and click on next. I agree. Easy Diffusion. It's now got plenty of free space, and we'll just let it go. This is going to take a while. And I really did try to do this under all Linux. I tried to create a Debian machine. I tried using Casa OS. I just tried to use Debian with Docker, and while it worked, there were no clear, concise guides on how to do it as easily as I did it under Windows. So you know me, I always take the easy way out, and yeah, because life is too tough. So we're going to let this run. This is going to take some amount of time, and when that some amount of time is done, I'll come back and we'll talk some more. So now Easy Diffusion is evidently installed, so it's asking me, do I want to run it? Well, I don't know. I'm not going to. I'm going to create a desktop shortcut, though. I'm going to click on Finish, and then it should set up a shortcut for me. So let's go see if it actually, I'm glad I expanded that space because it did use up more space than I had available to install that. So as you can see, these things, and I haven't even loaded a model yet with Easy Diffusion. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, and you can see where everything is at right now. You notice Docker Desktop is not running anymore. That's very interesting. Let's go start up Docker Desktop again, because I don't know why that stopped running. Maybe it wants to reboot something. We shall see. Hopefully installing Easy Diffusion didn't break anything with my Docker install. I don't think it would have. You never know, though. We are crossing the streams, in a matter of speaking. If you're a fan of Ghostbusters, the original one, it looks like OpenWebUI came back up. It's not closing. Yeah, it's not closing when I close the, unless I closed Docker Desktop for some reason, but I don't believe I did. All right, so now let's see if we can load Easy Diffusion. And the first time this runs, it still is completing the install. That's why it's very important that I was running it with Docker running at the same time, because I wanted to make sure that nothing else gets broke. And you can see it's got a lot of stuff it's still doing in the background to complete the install of this program. So we're going to let that run. It's going to take some time, and we'll come back when something new and exciting happens. And just like that, Easy Diffusion is up and running. So yeah, there you go. That was pretty simple. Actually, let's do a little test here. Let's go out to our And we'll switch over to Llama 3. And I've got a question I want to ask it. Let's see. So let's see what that does. What kind of response I get from that. It may take it a minute to come up. Yep, it's working. Yep, that's working. It's doing its thing. It's working. It's working. And Stable Diffusion is waiting for us, or Easy Diffusion, I should say, is waiting for us. Has it answered my question yet? No, still, there it goes. All right. So it's creating some Python code using pygame, and we'll let that run. So while that's running now, let's make an image of a astronaut on a horse and see what kind of contention we get. Looks like everything is sharing the load here. Yep, still writing the game while it's generating the image. And the Tesla card's running at a good temperature. And there you go, astronaut on a horse. And now you see why I like Easy Diffusion. Now, you can also access this web interface from any other machine just by coming here to network port. You have to turn this off, turn it back on, save all that, and then the next time you run it, it will allow you to connect up to this IP address, which we know is, well, we can't show you, it's a 5.21 or 25, whatever it was, and this port number 9000, and then I'll be able to run Easy Diffusion from my PC, from any PC on my network. So there you go. We've got both desktop OpenWebUI and Ollama 3 or Ollama running, along with Easy Diffusion to handle our image generation and manipulation. We're doing all this under a virtual Windows 11 machine with 16 two sockets, 8 cores each, total of 16 cores, 32 gig of RAM, an 200 gig SSD drive, and an NVIDIA Tesla P40 card with 24 gig of system RAM. And I still have another Tesla P40 in this unit. Does this give you an idea of what you can do with this kind of equipment now? Yeah, it's we're going to be doing some more exciting stuff with this.
I've been watching old Unky Joe. From Texas heat to where the cacti grow. Fixing server solar power in the land. Hoping that his plans all stand. Making life a touch more bright underneath those southern